Something keeps getting in the way. You don't know exactly what it is, but you feel it every time you try to move forward and end up right back here. This video is about finding out what that actually is. Let me describe it. You start strong, motivated, clear, and then something shifts quietly without warning. Suddenly, you're tired, distracted, negotiating with yourself over things that should be simple, taking yourself out of the very thing that you committed to that morning. And the worst part, you've been here before. Enough times that you started to wonder if this is just who you are. You're exhausted, not just physically. There's a deeper kind of tired that comes from constantly fighting yourself and never quite winning. You've done the programs, hired the coaches, read the books, said the affirmations, tracked everything, and something still keeps getting in the way. You can feel it. You just can't name it. Here's what the wellness industry and the muscle and fiction industry and the guru industry doesn't want to admit. Every solution you've ever been handed was designed to change what you do while leaving what drives you completely untouched. New behavior, same identity, same nervous system, same emotional program running underneath all of it. And that's why it keeps getting in the way. You're not failing the process. The process was never designed to reach the actual problem. What's in the way is not your habits. It's not your routine. It's not your consistency. It's the part of you that hasn't been identified yet. The pattern underneath the pattern. And until you see it clearly, it's going to keep running your life from the background. Imagine knowing exactly what has been getting in the way. Not a vague sense of it, not a feeling you can't explain, but actually seeing it, named, identified, out in the open where it no longer has the same power over you. Because here's what happens when you can finally see what's been running underneath everything. You stop being blindsided by your own behavior. You stop wondering why you keep abandoning yourself. You stop trying to push through something you haven't even identified yet. And you start working with yourself instead of constantly fighting against yourself. And that's not a distant dream. That's what becomes possible when you stop treating symptoms and start identifying the source. Every time you've started over, every time you've abandoned yourself midweek, every time you've watched yourself do the exact thing you said you wouldn't do, that wasn't weakness. That was something unidentified running the show. A pattern so familiar, your nervous system stopped questioning it. An emotional program so deeply wired, your brain started calling it your personality. The gap between who you want to be and how you're actually living is not a character flaw. It's a signal. It's telling you something is in the way that hasn't been named yet. And you cannot shift what you cannot see. The woman watching this video is not somebody who needs to be fixed. She's someone who has been working incredibly hard on the wrong level, pushing behavior while the real thing runs untouched underneath. You were never the problem. The unidentified pattern was the problem. And the moment you see it clearly, everything starts to make sense. It starts to make sense in a way it never has before. You stop blaming yourself. You stop calling it laziness or lack of discipline. You start seeing it for exactly what it is. And that is where the real change begins. I've worked with women who have done everything: therapy, programs, coaches, retreats, years of personal development work, and they were still stuck. And not because they weren't trying, because everything they had tried was working around the thing that actually needed to be identified. What I found again and again is that the real block is almost never what people think it is. It lives underneath the behavior, in the identity, in the nervous system, in the emotional patterns that feel so familiar, they've become invisible. When you can finally see what's actually in the way, the exhaustion starts to make sense. The pattern makes sense. And for the first time, you have something real to work with. I know what part of you is already thinking. I've done this before. I've journaled. I've reflected. I've done the inner work. I already know my patterns. Here's the difference. Knowing something intellectually and actually seeing where it lives in your body, your habits, your identity, your daily decisions, those are completely different things. Most people have a surface level story about what's in the way. The MindSHIFT guide goes underneath that story. It's not a program. It's not a curriculum. It's not another thing to complete and forget. It's a starting point. It's a toe in the water. The first honest look at what is actually running underneath everything. And for a lot of women, it's the first time something has ever made their patterns make complete sense. When you can finally identify what's in the way, something shifts. Not because the work is done. The guide's just the beginning. But because you can't unknow what you've seen. Women who go through this stop blaming themselves for the patterns they couldn't even see clearly before. They stop working around the real problem. They stop being blindsided by their behavior. They start approaching the work differently, with clarity instead of confusion, with direction instead of frustration. And the exhaustion doesn't disappear overnight. But the feeling of fighting something invisible, that starts to lift because it's no longer invisible. If something has been getting in the way and you haven't been able to name it yet, this is where you start. Not with a 12-week overhaul, not with another reset, not with another plan to follow, with one honest look at what is actually underneath everything. The MindSHIFT guide is linked below. It's the beginning of the work. The part where you finally stop working around the problem and start seeing it clearly. MindSHIFT the MindSHIFT, create coherence. The link is in the description.